The research station Gentle Whisper had been floating in the Corhan Nebula for almost 3 years. It was a peaceful place where Velari scientists studied the strange gases and lights of the nebula. The Velari were a gentle species with thin bodies, 4 arms, and skin so clear you could almost see through it. They were not fighters. They had no weapons. They had come to this quiet corner of space to learn and discover. Commander Tylus stood at the main window of the station, watching the purple and blue clouds of the nebula swirl slowly in the darkness. She had spent most of her adult life here, leading a team of 1,200 researchers and their families. Children played in the lower levels. Scientists argued about their findings in the labs. It was a good life, a quiet life. Then the alarm started screaming. Tylus ran to the command center, her 4 arms helping her move quickly through the narrow corridors. When she arrived, her officers were already at their stations, their faces pale with fear. On the main screen, she saw 5 ships dropping out of hyperspace. They were ugly vessels, covered in weapons and armor. She recognized them immediately. Kreth raiders. The Kreth were everything the Velari were not. They were large, covered in thick scales, with claws and teeth built for killing. They traveled the galaxy, taking what they wanted from those too weak to stop them. And the Velari were very, very weak. "They are hailing us," said one of her officers, his voice shaking. "Put it through," Tylus replied, trying to keep her own voice steady. The face that appeared on the screen made her want to run and hide. The Kreth commander was massive, with scars running across his face and eyes that held no kindness at all. His name, she would later learn, was Vorkith. "Velari Station," Vorkith said, his voice like rocks grinding together. "You will prepare to be boarded. You will give us all your supplies, your fuel, and your technology. If you resist, we will kill everyone aboard. You have 1 hour." The screen went dark. Tylus felt her hearts pounding in her chest. The Velari had 2 hearts, and both of them were beating so fast she thought they might burst. Around her, officers began to cry. Some fell to their knees. They all knew there was no way to fight. The station had no weapons. They could not run. They could only wait to die. But Tylus was a commander, and she would not give up without trying something. "Send a distress signal," she ordered. "Send it on every frequency. Send it everywhere. Someone might hear us. Someone might come." Her communications officer looked at her with sad eyes. "Commander, even if someone hears us, no one will come. The Kreth have 5 warships. No one would risk their lives for us. We are not important enough." Tylus knew he was probably right. The Velari had no powerful friends. They had no military allies. They were just scientists far from home, alone in the dark. "Send it anyway," she said quietly. The signal went out into the void. A desperate cry for help that no one was expected to answer. 6 hours away. At the edge of Terran space, a ship called the Starfall was on routine patrol. It was not a large ship or a famous one. It was just a cruiser doing its job, watching the borders and keeping the peace. The crew was small, maybe 80 people. All of them human. Lieutenant Commander Kyle Bennett was sitting in his captain's chair, drinking coffee and reading reports when Ensign Maria Vega sat up straight at her communication station. "Sir," she said, "we are picking up a distress signal." Bennett put down his coffee. "What kind of distress signal?" "A Velari research station. They say they are under attack by Kreth raiders. 5 ships. They are asking for any available help." The bridge went quiet. Everyone knew what this meant. 5 Kreth warships against 1 Terran cruiser was not a fight. It was suicide. The smart thing to do was to report the signal and keep moving. Let someone else handle it. Let someone with more ships, more guns, more people deal with the problem. Bennett looked around his bridge. He saw Maria Vega, young and scared but trying not to show it. He saw Danny Reyes at the weapons station, a man who had been in the service for 20 years and had seen more fights than he could count. He saw Amy Cho at Tactical, already running calculations on her screen. How long to reach them? Bennett asked. 6 hours at maximum speed, Amy replied. But sir, even if we push the engines as hard as they can go, we will arrive alone. There is no backup. There is no fleet. It will just be us. Bennett nodded slowly. He thought about the Velari on that station. He had never met a Velari in person, but he knew about them. They were fragile creatures from a world with low gravity and thin air. To them, humans were terrifying monsters from a death world, a planet where everything was trying to kill you. Earth had high gravity, dangerous animals, poisonous plants, violent weather, and diseases that would destroy most alien species in hours. The galaxy called humans Deathworlders. Most species were afraid of them, but those Velari had sent the distress call. They'd have asked for help. And Kyle Bennett had heard it. "Sound general quarters," he said, his voice calm and steady. "Set course for the Corhan Nebula. Maximum speed." Maria Vega stared at him. "Sir, are you sure?" "We are only one ship." Bennett stood up from his chair. He was not a tall man or a particularly strong one. He did not look like a hero from a story. He looked like what he was, a tired officer who had been doing this job for 15 years. But when he spoke, his crew listened. "Those people sent a call for help," he said. "They are scared and alone, and they think no one is coming. They think no one cares enough to try. I will not prove them right. I will not sit here drinking coffee while 1,200 innocent people die. We are going." He looked around at his crew, meeting each of their eyes. "I am not ordering anyone to come with me. If you want to leave, I will understand. But I'm going to that station, and I'm going to do everything I can to save those people. Because that is what we do. That is who we are." No one moved. No one asked to leave. Danny Reyes cracked his knuckles and turned back to his weapons console. "Well then," he said with a small smile, "let us go introduce ourselves to some Kreth." The Starfall turned toward the nebula and began to fly. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Rosa Martinez pushed the reactor harder than it was designed to go. In the cargo bay, Sergeant Nicole Grant gathered her Marines and began preparing for the worst. Throughout the ship, men and women checked their weapons, said quiet prayers, and wrote messages to their families. 6 hours away, the Velari waited to die. They did not know that help was coming. They did not know that somewhere in the darkness, a single ship full of Deathworlders had heard their cry and decided that the odds did not matter. The risk did not matter. The only thing that mattered was that someone needed help, and humans always answered. News traveled fast in the galaxy, faster than any ship could fly. Within hours of the Starfall changing course, word had reached the Galactic Council that a human vessel was heading toward the Corhan Nebula to fight 5 Kreth raiders alone. The council chamber was filled with representatives from hundreds of species. They sat in their seats, talking in worried voices, trying to understand what the humans were thinking. The Glorian ambassador, a tall being made mostly of crystal, spoke first. "This is madness," he said, his voice ringing like bells. "One ship cannot defeat 5. The humans will die for nothing." The Mendari representative, a small furry creature with large eyes, shook her head slowly. "Perhaps they do not understand the danger. Humans are new to the galaxy. They have only been traveling the stars for 100 years. Maybe they simply do not know how strong the Kreth are." "They know," said an older representative, a Torvian who had met humans before. "I have dealt with their kind. They know exactly what they are flying into. They simply do not care." The council fell silent, trying to understand a species that would fly to certain death to save strangers. On the Kreth flagship, Commander Vorkith received the news with amusement. He was sitting in his command chair, surrounded by his officers, when one of them brought him the report. A human ship was coming. One small cruiser. Vorkith read the report twice, then began to laugh. "One ship," he said, showing his teeth in a smile that had no warmth. "The humans send one ship to fight us. Are they stupid or are they crazy?" His second-in-command, a scarred female named Cressa, did not share his amusement. "I have heard stories about humans," she said carefully. "They come from a death world. Their planet is full of poison and predators. They are supposed to be dangerous." Vorkith waved his clawed hand dismissively. "Stories to scare children. They are small and soft, with no claws and no scales. What can one ship of them do against 5 of ours?" Cressa said nothing more, but she ordered her gunners to stay alert. Stories or not, she did not like surprises. On the Starfall, the crew worked through the hours of travel like a machine with many parts. Everyone had a job, and everyone did it without complaint. They all knew what was waiting for them at the end of this journey, but not one of them suggested turning back thought in the engine room. Rosa Martinez had not slept since they changed course. She was covered in grease and sweat, crawling through the reactor housing, making adjustments that the ship's designers would have called impossible. Her assistant, a young man named Pete Collins, handed her tools and watched with wide eyes. "Chief," Pete said quietly, "are we really going to make it in time?" Rosa pulled herself out of a maintenance hatch and wiped her face with a dirty rag. "We are going to make it," she said firmly. "This ship is going to get us there, and then it is going to fight, and then it is going to bring us home. I will not accept any other result." Pete nodded, wanting to believe her. Rosa went back to work in the cargo bay. Sergeant Nicole Grant stood before her squad of 12 Marines. They were checking their weapons, adjusting their armor, and trying not to think about what was coming. Grant walked among them, speaking to each one personally. Corporal Eddie Tran was cleaning his rifle for the 5th time. He was young, only 23, but he was one of the best shots in the unit. Grant stopped beside him and put a hand on his shoulder. "How are you feeling?" she asked. Eddie looked up at her with serious eyes. "Scared," he admitted. "But ready," Grant nodded. "Good. Being scared means you understand the situation. Being ready means you will do your job anyway. That is all I ask." She moved on to Private Sam Ortega, who was sitting alone in the corner, staring at a small picture in his hands. Grant sat down beside him without saying anything. After a moment, Sam showed her the picture. It was a woman and 2 small children, smiling at the camera. "My wife and kids," Sam said softly. "I told them I would come home." Grant looked at the picture, then at Sam. "Then you will come home," she said simply. "We do not break promises." Sam put the picture back in his pocket and picked up his weapon. His hands were steady now. On the bridge, Kyle Bennett was reviewing everything they knew about the Kreth. He had Amy Cho pull up every report, every battle record, every piece of intelligence they had. He studied how the Kreth fought, how they moved, what they expected from their enemies. He was looking for weaknesses. "They rely on fear," he said finally, pointing at the tactical display. "Look at their formation. They spread out to look bigger, more threatening. They expect their enemies to run or surrender. They are not prepared for someone who does not do either." Maria Vega looked worried. "But sir, even if we surprise them, they still have more guns, more armor, more everything. How do we win?" Bennett turned to look at her. His face was tired, but his eyes were sharp. "We do not have to destroy them all," he said. "We just have to hurt them badly enough that they decide the Valari are not worth the trouble. Raiders do not like fair fights. If we make this painful for them, they might run." Danny Reyes laughed from his station. "And if they do not run?" Bennett shrugged. Then we keep fighting until we cannot fight anymore. But we will not go down easy. We will make them remember us. The hours passed slowly. The crew ate their meals, said their prayers, and tried to rest when they could. Some wrote letters to their families, saved in the ship's computer in case they did not come back. Others sat in silence, thinking about their lives and the choices that had brought them here. In her small quarters, Maria Vega recorded a message for her mother. She talked about ordinary things at first, about the food on the ship and the friends she had made. Then her voice grew serious. "Mama," she said, "if you are watching this, then something has happened to me. I want you to know that I chose this. I chose to go help those people, even knowing what might happen. I am scared, but I am not sorry. You always taught me to help others, even when it was hard, even when it cost something. I hope I made you proud." She saved the message and went back to her station. As the starfall flew through the darkness, the Valari on the Gentle Whisper waited in terror. The Kreth ships circled their station like hungry animals, firing occasional warning shots that shook the walls and made the children cry. Commander Tylus had gathered everyone in the central chamber, the safest part of the station, and tried to keep them calm. "Someone will come," she told them, even though she did not believe it herself. "We sent our signal. Someone will hear it. Someone will help." An old scientist named Vorin looked at her with tired eyes. "No one is coming, Commander. We both know this. The galaxy does not care about us. We are too small, too weak, too far away. We should prepare ourselves for the end." Tylus wanted to argue, but she had no words. She simply held the old man's hand and waited with her people in the darkness. They did not know that 5 hours away, a ship full of humans was pushing its engines to the breaking point. They did not know that strangers they had never met were willing to die for them. They did not know that their desperate call for help had found the one species in the galaxy crazy enough to answer it. The Deathworlders were coming, and they were bringing war with them. The starfall dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Korhan Nebula, and for a long moment, the universe seemed to hold its breath. The purple and blue clouds of the nebula stretched out before them like a painting, beautiful and terrible at the same time. And there, in the middle of that beauty, the Valari station hung in space, surrounded by 5 Kreth warships. Kyle Bennett stood from his chair and walked to the front of the bridge, looking at the tactical display. The Kreth ships were exactly where the report said they would be, arranged in a wide circle around the station. They were big, ugly things, covered in weapons and armor. Each one was almost twice the size of the starfall. "They've seen us," Maria Vega reported from her station. "We are being hailed." "Put it on screen," Bennett said. The face of Vorkith appeared before them, filling the main display. The Kreth commander looked amused, his scarred face twisted into something like a smile. Behind him, Bennett could see other Kreth officers laughing and pointing at their screens. "Human vessel," Vorkith said, his voice full of contempt. "You are either very brave or very stupid. I have not decided which. You are outnumbered and outgunned. Leave now, and I will permit you to run away. Stay, and you will be destroyed. This is your only warning." Bennett did not move. He did not show any fear or anger on his face. He simply stood there, looking at the Kreth commander like he was studying an interesting puzzle. "Kreth commander," he said finally, his voice calm and steady. "My name is Kyle Bennett, Lieutenant Commander of the Terran vessel Starfall. The research station Gentle Whisper is under our protection. You will withdraw your forces immediately, or we will consider you hostile." For a moment, Vorkith said nothing. Then he began to laugh, a horrible sound like stones being crushed. Other Kreth joined him, their laughter filling the bridge of the starfall through the communication channel. "One ship," Vorkith said when he finally stopped laughing. You bring one ship and threaten me? Perhaps humans really are as crazy as the stories say. Very well, little human. If you wish to die, I will grant your wish. The screen went dark. Kyle Bennett turned to his crew. They were all looking at him, waiting for orders, ready to follow him into whatever came next. He saw fear in some of their faces, but he also saw determination. He also saw trust. Maria, he said quietly, open a channel to the Valari station. I want them to hear what happens next. Maria nodded and pressed the controls on her console. Channel open, sir. Bennett took a deep breath. All hands, this is the commander. The Kreth have refused to withdraw. We are engaging. Remember what we are fighting for. Remember why we came here. These people called for help, and we answered. Now let us show the galaxy what that means. He turned to Danny Reyes at the weapons station. Danny, target their lead ship. Amy, I want evasive pattern Delta as soon as we start moving. Rosa, he spoke into the ship's intercom, give me everything you have got. From the engine room, Rosa Martinez's voice came back strong and clear. You will get it, sir. Do not hold back. The Starfall surged forward. What happened next would be talked about for years to come. The human vessel, smaller and weaker than any single Kreth ship, flew directly into the enemy formation. It was a move so unexpected, so reckless, that the Kreth gunners hesitated for a precious few seconds. They could not believe what they were seeing. No one flew toward 5 warships. No one attacked when they were so badly outnumbered. It made no sense. That hesitation cost them dearly. The Starfall opened fire while still moving forward, her weapons targeting the lead Kreth ship with perfect accuracy. Danny Reyes worked his console like an artist, sending bolt after bolt into the enemy vessel's engines. The first shots punched through their shields. The second volley hit something important inside, and the ship began to spin out of control. One down, Danny reported. Already targeting the next ship thought, the Kreth finally recovered from their surprise and began returning fire. Energy beams filled the space around the Starfall, turning the nebula clouds bright with explosions. Amy Cho flew the ship like a dancer, weaving between the shots with movements that seemed impossible for a vessel that size. Shields at 80%, she called out. 70, 60. Keep moving, Bennett ordered. Do not give them a clean shot. On the Valari station, Commander Tylis watched in stunned silence. Her people had gathered around the few working display screens, watching the battle unfold. None of them could speak. None of them could believe what they were seeing. One ship. One small human ship was fighting 5 Kreth warships. And it was not losing. This is impossible, whispered Voron, the old scientist who had given up hope. How are they doing this? Tylis had no answer. She just watched as the human vessel danced through a storm of enemy fire, hitting back with every pass, refusing to stop or slow down or run away. The battle lasted for what felt like hours, but was really only minutes. The Starfall took hit after hit, her shields failing, her hull starting to crack in places. But she kept fighting. When her main weapons overheated, Danny switched to secondary systems. When those failed, he found other ways to hurt the enemy dot by the time the Starfall finally went dark. Drifting in space with her engines cold, 2 Kreth ships were completely disabled. A third was limping away, too damaged to continue fighting. The other 2 were still operational, but they had stopped attacking. Vorkith stared at his tactical display in disbelief. He had lost 3 ships to a single human cruiser. 3 ships. His crew was looking at him with fear in their eyes. Fear not of the humans, but of him, wondering if he would blame them for this disaster. They are dead in space, Cressa reported quietly. Their ship is crippled. They cannot fight anymore. Vorkith growled deep in his throat. He wanted to destroy the human vessel, to blast it into atoms, to make them pay for what they had done. But he had a mission. The Valari station still held valuable supplies and technology. He would not leave empty-handed. "Send boarding parties to the station," he ordered. "Take the hostages. If the humans want to save them so badly, let them watch while we take everything." On the Starfall, Kyle Bennett sat in his chair, staring at a display that showed nothing but red warning lights. The ship was dying around him. Main power was gone. Weapons were offline. The engines were cold. They had done everything they could, and it was not enough. Then Rosa Martinez's voice came over the intercom, weak but determined. "Bridge, this is engineering. I have emergency power to the shuttle bay. One launch. That is all I can give you." Bennett looked up. One launch. One chance. He turned to Nicole Grant, who had been waiting on the bridge since the battle started, her Marines ready in the shuttle bay below. "Grant," he said, "can your people make it?" Nicole Grant checked her weapon and looked at her squad's readouts on her portable display. 12 Marines. Against an unknown number of Kreth soldiers already boarding the station. It was another impossible situation. Another fight they probably could not win. She smiled, a hard smile with no humor in it. "We will make it, sir. Just get us to that station." Bennett nodded slowly. "Go, save those people. We will be here when you get back." Grant saluted and ran for the shuttle bay. Behind her, her Marines followed, their boots pounding on the metal floor. They knew what they were running toward. They knew the odds. But they went anyway, because somewhere on that station, innocent people were waiting to be saved, and humans always answered the call. The news of what happened at Korhan Nebula spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Within days, everyone knew the story. One human ship had faced 5 Kreth warships. One human ship had destroyed 3 of them. 12 human soldiers had boarded a station, defeated 30 Kreth warriors, and rescued over 1,000 innocent civilians. The Kreth Dominion was humiliated. Their commanders argued about who was to blame. Their people whispered in fear about the Deathworlders, who did not know how to quit. Within weeks, the Kreth withdrew from the entire sector, moving their operations far away from any place humans might decide to protect. But the biggest changes happened in the halls of the Galactic Council, 6 months after the battle. Commander Tylus stood before the assembled representatives of hundreds of species. She had been invited to speak, to share her experience, to help the galaxy understand what had happened. She was nervous, her 4 hands clasped together in front of her, but her voice was steady. "I was there," she began. "I watched the Kreth surround our station. I felt the fear as they told us we would die. I saw my people crying, holding their children, saying goodbye to each other. We had sent a distress signal, but none of us believed anyone would come. Why would they? We are just scientists. We are weak. We have nothing to offer. The galaxy has always made it clear that the weak do not deserve protection." The chamber was silent. Representatives from powerful species shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Then the humans came. Tylus looked around the room, meeting eyes with delegates from all corners of the galaxy. 1 ship. That is all they sent, because that is all they had nearby. 1 small cruiser, badly outnumbered, with no chance of winning. And they came anyway. They did not ask what we could give them in return. They did not calculate the political advantages. They heard our call for help, and they simply came. She paused, letting her words sink in. I watched their ship fight 5 warships. I watched it take damage that should have destroyed it 10 times over. And I watched it keep fighting, keep protecting us, until it could not move anymore. Then I watched their soldiers board our station and face enemies twice their size. Enemies trained for killing. Enemies who outnumbered them badly. And they won. The Glorian ambassador raised a crystal hand. Commander Tylus, with respect, we have all read the reports. What we want to understand is why. Why would the humans risk so much for strangers? What did they gain? Tylus nodded slowly. I asked that same question to their commander, Kyle Bennett. He looked at me like he did not understand what I was asking. He said, "You sent a distress call. You needed help. What else were we supposed to do?" Murmurs ran through the chamber. I asked one of their soldiers, Sergeant Nicole Grant, why she had risked her life for beings she had never met. Beings who could never repay her. Beings who were so different from humans that we could barely survive in the same room. Tylus's voice grew quiet, but somehow it carried through the entire chamber. She said, "Because that is what you do when someone needs help." The council fell silent again. Representatives looked at each other, unsure how to respond to such a simple answer. The galaxy calls humans Deathworlders, Tylus continued. We tell stories about their violent planet. We talk about their predatory history. We whisper about how their bodies can survive conditions that would kill any of us. We feared them because they come from a world of monsters. Because we believed they must be monsters too. She straightened her thin body, standing as tall as she could. We were wrong. Yes, humans are dangerous. They are strong where we are weak. They can survive pain and damage that would destroy other species. Their reflexes are faster, their bodies harder, their will to fight seemingly endless. By every measure, they are exactly the monsters we feared. But here is what we did not understand. Here is what the Kreth learned too late. The humans are not monsters who prey on the weak. They are monsters who protect the weak. They are monsters who run toward danger when others run away. They are monsters who hear a cry for help and answer it, no matter the cost. The representative from the Kreth Dominion stood up angrily. They attacked our ships without provocation. They destroyed our vessels and killed our soldiers. Tylus turned to face him calmly. Your soldiers were attacking an unarmed civilian station. Your commander threatened to kill over 1,000 innocent people. The humans gave you a chance to leave. You chose to stay. What happened after that was your own choice. The Kreth representative sat down slowly, unable to argue with her words. Tylus turned back to the rest of the council. I came here today to tell you something important. The galaxy has been afraid of humanity for 100 years. We have kept them at a distance. We have refused to trust them. We have treated them like dangerous animals who might turn on us at any moment. But when the Valari needed help, when we were alone and afraid and certain we were going to die, the humans came. They did not ask for payment. They did not demand treaties or promises. They simply came because we needed help. I ask you now, all of you, to think about what kind of species does that? What kind of people risk their lives for strangers? What kind of civilization teaches its children that helping others is more important than personal safety? She looked around the chamber one final time. The humans are monsters. But they are our monsters. They stand between the helpless and those who would harm them. And I, for one, am grateful that when we called for help, the Deathworlders answered. Tylus stepped back from the podium, her speech finished. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, the Mendari representative began to clap, a soft pattering sound from her small hands. Others joined her. The applause grew, spreading through the chamber, until hundreds of species were showing their approval. Not everyone clapped. Some representatives sat in uncomfortable silence, unwilling to admit they had been wrong about humanity. But most recognized the truth when they heard it. Most understood that the galaxy needed to change. How it thought about the strange beings from the death world called Earth, back on the Starfall, which had been rebuilt and upgraded with technology donated by grateful species across the sector. Kyle Bennett stood on his bridge and watched the stars. His crew was around him, all the people who had fought beside him, who had believed in what they were doing Even when the odds seemed impossible, Maria Vega was at her communications station, monitoring the channels. Danny Reyes was checking the new weapon systems that the Valari had helped install. Rosa Martinez was in engineering, already finding ways to make the new engines work even better than their designers intended. And in the cargo bay, Nicole Grant was training a new batch of Marines, preparing them for whatever came next. "Commander," Maria said, breaking the comfortable silence, "we are receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council. They want to thank us officially for what we did at Korhan Nebula. There's going to be a ceremony." Bennett smiled slightly. "Tell them thank you, but we do not need ceremonies. We were just doing our job. What should I say when they ask what we want in return?" Bennett thought about it for a moment. He thought about the Valari children who would grow up safe because of what his crew had done. He thought about the other species out there, the weak and the frightened, who now knew that someone would answer if they called. "Tell them we do not want anything," he said finally. "Just tell them to do the same for someone else when they get the chance. Pass it on." Maria nodded and turned back to her console. The Starfall continued on its patrol, moving through the darkness between stars. Somewhere out there, other species were learning what it meant to have humans as neighbors. Somewhere out there, other raiders were thinking twice about attacking the weak. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was slowly changing, one rescued station at a time. And somewhere on a rebuilt research station in the Korhan Nebula, Valari children listened to their parents tell a new story. Not a story about monsters to be feared, but about monsters who came to save them. About Deathworlders who heard a cry for help and answered it. About humans. The distress signal that they had traveled across space, bouncing off satellites and relay stations, passing through the void until it reached the one ship that would respond. It had been a desperate act, a final hope from people who expected nothing, but the humans had heard it, and they had come. That was the lesson the galaxy learned at Korhan Nebula. That was the story that would be told for generations. Not a story about the violence of humanity, or their strange biology, or their terrifying home world. A story about what happens when someone needs help and the Deathworlders are listening, because humans always answer the call. Always. The galaxy had known about Earth for almost 50 years. When humans first sent their ships beyond their own solar system, the older species watched with great interest. Earth was what they called a death world. The gravity was heavy. The air was filled with oxygen that could burn and corrode. Predators walked the land and swam the seas. Diseases evolved faster than medicine could chase them. Storms could flatten cities. The ground itself would shake and split open without warning. And yet, somehow, humans had not only survived on this terrible world. They had thrived. They had built civilizations. They had conquered their own planet and then reached for the stars. Ambassador Corvith of the Vellani Collective was one of the first aliens to meet humans face to face. The Vellani were a gentle species with soft blue skin and large dark eyes. They had evolved on a world where the weather was calm, the predators were small, and cooperation was the only path to survival. When Corvith first shook hands with a human diplomat, he felt the strength in those fingers and saw the teeth behind that smile. He understood then that humans were something new in the galaxy, something that didn't fit the old categories. The Galactic Assembly treated humanity with polite caution. They were given observer status but not full membership. They were allowed to trade but not to vote. Many of the older species believed that humans were too young, too aggressive, too unpredictable to be trusted with real power. Better to keep them at a distance and watch. Corvith had spent 3 years studying humans. He had visited their colonies and walked their cities. He had eaten their food and listened to their music. He had learned that they were not simple creatures. They could be kind and cruel, brave and fearful, wise and foolish. They loved deeply and hated fiercely. They built beautiful things and destroyed them just as easily. But one thing he never understood was their strange relationship with violence. Humans talked about peace constantly. They wrote poems about it. They built monuments to it. And yet they also maintained massive military forces. They trained their young to fight. They told stories where heroes solved problems with their fists or their weapons. It was a contradiction that Corvith could not resolve in his mind. On the day, everything changed. Corvith was attending a routine diplomatic conference on the Sara Prime. It was a neutral station in a neutral system. A place where species from across the galaxy could meet and talk without old conflicts getting in the way. The conference was boring. Trade agreements. Border disputes. Border dispute. The usual slow grinding of galactic politics. Captain Daniel Brooks was also on the Sara Prime that day. His ship, the Constellation, was docked for repairs after a long patrol mission along the outer territories. Brooks was a man in his mid-50s, with gray in his short hair and scars on his hands. He had been a soldier for most of his adult life. He had fought in 3 wars on Earth before humanity reached the stars, and he had fought in 2 more conflicts since then. His eyes had that particular look that came from seeing too much death and carrying too much weight. Brooks was sitting in a small bar near the docking ring when the signal came through. It cut across every frequency, every channel, every device on the station. A voice filled with terror and despair, speaking in a language that the translation systems quickly decoded. "Please, help us. They are killing us. We cannot fight them. Our children are dying. Please. Anyone who can hear this. Please help us." The voice belonged to an Iridani. They were a species that lived on a world near the edge of explored space. Their bodies were made of living crystal that grew and shaped itself over their long lives. They were scientists and artists. They had no military because they had never needed one. They had never harmed anyone. Brooks set down his drink and listened as the message repeated. Details emerged. An unknown fleet had appeared in their system without warning. They were bombing cities. They were capturing Iridani and breaking them apart to harvest the rare minerals in their crystalline bodies. The government had fallen in the first hour. Now there was only chaos and slaughter. The bar had gone silent. Aliens from a dozen species stared at the screens showing the distress signal. Some looked sad. Some looked frightened. But none of them moved. Brooks stood up and walked to the docking bay where his crew was waiting. His first officer, a woman named Sandra Reyes, met him at the airlock. She had already heard the signal. "What are we going to do, sir?" she asked. "We're going to call home," Brooks said. "And then we're going to help those people. The assembly hasn't authorized any action. They're calling an emergency session, but you know how long those take. Days, maybe weeks of debate." Brooks looked at her with hard eyes. "Those people don't have weeks. They might not have days. Every minute we stand here talking, someone is dying." He walked onto his ship and went straight to the communications room. Within minutes, he had an encrypted channel open to Earth, to the headquarters of the Terran Defense Council. He explained the situation in short, clear sentences. An innocent species was being slaughtered. The attackers were unknown but appeared to be powerful. The Galactic Assembly was doing nothing. The response came faster than he expected. A face appeared on his screen. Admiral Catherine Cole, commander of the Terran Third Fleet. She was a tall woman with iron gray hair pulled back tight. Her uniform was perfect. Her eyes were cold and sharp. "I've already seen the signal," she said. "We picked it up 20 minutes ago. I've been waiting to see if the assembly would act." "They won't," Brooks said. "Not in time. No, they won't." Cole paused for just a moment. "Captain, I'm activating the fleet. Full deployment." Every ship we can reach within the next 6 hours is going to jump to those coordinates. I want you to go ahead as our forward scout. Get there, assess the situation, and send us targeting data. Understood, Admiral and Captain? Those people called for help. We're going to answer. That's what we do. The channel closed. Brooks turned to his crew, who had gathered behind him. Their faces showed fear and determination in equal measure. They knew what was coming. They knew some of them might not come back. You heard the Admiral, Brooks said. Set a course for the Iridani system. Maximum speed. We've got people to save. The Constellation's engines roared to life. Outside the viewport, the stars stretched into lines as the ship jumped into hyperspace, racing toward a battle that no one had asked them to fight. Behind them, on the Sara Prime, Ambassador Corvith stood frozen in the diplomatic hall. He had just witnessed something impossible. A human captain had received a distress call from complete strangers and immediately committed himself to combat. No debate, no calculation of costs and benefits. Just action. Corvith realized that he had finally understood something important about humans. They were not civilized in the way that other species were civilized. They were something older, something more primal. When they heard screaming, they did not form committees. They came running with weapons drawn.